The world before Edison was a world that surrendered to darkness. Every sunset brought the same ancient ritual. Mothers rushing to finish their sewing before the light died. Fathers closing their shops as shadows grew long. Entire cities retreating indoors as night transformed familiar streets into treacherous mazes. In this world of 1870s America, a young inventor named Thomas Edison watched his mother strain to read by candlelight, her eyes squinting against the dancing shadows, and asked a question that would reshape civilization. Why must we accept this? What drove a partially deaf newspaper boy from Ohio to challenge humanity's oldest limitation? In the basement laboratory of his childhood home, surrounded by bottles and wires, Edison began experiments that would consume the next decade of his life and birth an invention that would banish darkness forever. But the path to electric light was littered with spectacular failures. Edison's team tested over 6,000 materials, burning through fortunes and reputations, while gas company executives mocked the Wizard of Menlo Park for attempting the impossible. Feel the mounting pressure as investors grew restless, as competitors raced toward the same prize, as Edison himself drove his body to exhaustion in pursuit of sustainable illumination. Then, the moment everything changed, a carbonized cotton thread glowing steadily for 13 hours, then 40, then hundreds more. Edison's vision expanded beyond the bulb itself to encompass an entire electrical ecosystem. Generators, distribution networks, the infrastructure of a new age. Finally, September 4th, 1882, when Edison threw the switch at Pearl Street Station and Manhattan blazed with electric light. Humanity's relationship with time itself transformed as the ancient tyranny of sunset crumbled before the steady glow of Edison's gift. From a boy watching his mother struggle in candlelight to the architect of our illuminated world, this is how one restless mind conquered darkness itself. In 1870s America, the setting sun was more than just the end of another day. It was a prison door slamming shut on human potential. Streets that bustled with commerce and conversation during daylight hours transformed into shadowy mazes. Only the desperate or dangerous dared to tread there. Housewives rushed through evening preparations, racing against the dying light. They knew that once darkness fell, their world would shrink. It would become just a small circle of illumination, cast by a single oil lamp. The wealthy counted their candles like currency, rationing light as carefully as food. Meanwhile, the poor made do with smoky tallow that filled their homes with acrid fumes. Black stains covered their walls. This was the world that greeted Thomas Alva Edison when he entered it on February 11, 1847, in Milan, Ohio. Born into a reality where fire had been humanity's only defense against darkness for thousands of years, young Edison would grow up surrounded by the constant anxiety of flame. Every week brought news of another house consumed by an overturned lamp, another factory worker maimed in the dim light, another child forbidden from pursuing their studies after sunset. The irony was inescapable. In an age of steam engines and telegraphs, of railroads spanning continents and ships crossing oceans, humanity still cowered. They feared the same darkness that had terrorized their cave-dwelling ancestors. Edison's childhood was marked by an unusual restlessness of mind. It set him apart from other children. His teachers dismissed him as slow, unable to recognize that his thoughts simply moved along different pathways. While other boys played games in the fading afternoon light, young Thomas retreated to his basement laboratory. It was a cramped space filled with bottles and wires where his true education began. His mother, Nancy Edison, became his champion and teacher. She recognized in her strange son a spark of something extraordinary. She encouraged his questions, fed his curiosity with books. She never complained when his experiments filled the house with smoke or mysterious odors. The moment that would shape Edison's destiny came when he was 12 years old. He was watching his beloved mother struggle to read in the evening light. Nancy's eyesight had been deteriorating for years, a common affliction in an age when people strained their eyes against inadequate illumination. Each night, Edison watched her pull her chair closer to the candle. She held books at awkward angles to catch the flickering light, her gentle hands trembling with the effort. Sometimes she would pause, rubbing her temples, fighting the headaches that came from squinting at small print in dancing shadows. The boy who questioned everything found himself asking why. Why should his brilliant mother suffer? Simply because the sun had set? Edison's formal education ended early, but his real learning was just beginning. At 13, he took a job selling newspapers and candy on the Grand Trunk Railroad. He turned the baggage car into a rolling laboratory. There, he conducted experiments between stations. The other railroad workers watched with a mixture of amusement and alarm. The boy mixed chemicals and tested theories while the train swayed along its tracks. His unconventional classroom extended beyond the laboratory. He devoured every book he could find on chemistry and physics, teaching himself through trial and spectacular error. One particularly enthusiastic experiment resulted in a fire. It got him thrown off the train. But even this setback couldn't dampen his enthusiasm for discovery. His mother's faith in his unusual mind never wavered. Even when others saw only a troublesome boy with dangerous hobbies, she understood. She saw that his different way of thinking, his ability to see connections others missed, his relentless questioning of accepted limitations, might someday lead to something remarkable. While she couldn't have imagined the full scope of what her son would achieve, she sensed something important. His obsession with conquering darkness came from a place of love. It came from watching her struggle each evening with failing light. Edison's first real encounter with the mysterious force that would define his life came when he learned telegraphy. Working as a night operator, he felt the pulse of electricity flowing through copper wires. It carried messages across vast distances at the speed of thought. Here was a power that defied conventional understanding, invisible, instantaneous, obedient to those who understood its nature. As he tapped out messages in Morse code, Edison began to sense possibilities. This strange force held potential far beyond communication. If electricity could carry words through darkness, might it not also carry light? The young telegraph operator became known for two things: his uncanny ability to improve the equipment he worked with, and his habit of conducting experiments during quiet night shifts. Station masters would arrive in the morning to find their offices transformed, makeshift laboratories, with batteries and wires arranged in configurations that had nothing to do with telegraphy. More than once, Edison lost a job because his experiments interfered with message traffic. But each position taught him more about the nature of electrical current and the challenges of controlling it. His early attempts at invention met with failure more often than success. Edison's pockets were perpetually empty. Every spare cent went toward equipment and materials for his experiments. Creditors learned to recognize his shuffling gait. They would cross the street to avoid another excuse about delayed payments. He slept in railway stations, survived on apple pie and coffee. He wore the same clothes until they practically fell apart, all so he could afford another spool of wire, another battery, another chance to unlock electricity's secrets. Yet each failure taught him something valuable. Edison developed a methodical approach to problem solving that would serve him throughout his career. He kept detailed notebooks, recording not just what worked, but more importantly, what didn't work and why. This systematic documentation of failure would become one of his greatest assets. It allowed him to eliminate thousands of wrong answers in his search for the right ones. While others saw setbacks as reasons to quit, Edison saw them as necessary steps toward success. His obsession with electrical light grew stronger with each passing year. By candlelight, the irony never escaped him. He studied the works of pioneers, Michael Faraday, Alessandro Volta, and others who had begun to map the strange territory of electrical science. He read about arc lamps that produced brilliant but harsh light, suitable for lighthouses but far too intense for homes. He learned about various attempts to create incandescent light, watching materials glow briefly before burning out. Each experiment, each failure, each small success added another piece to the puzzle forming in his mind. Edison's first taste of real success came with improvements to the telegraph system. His quadruplex telegraph could send 4 messages simultaneously over a single wire. It earned him recognition and, more importantly, capital. For the first time in his life, he had resources beyond his immediate needs. But instead of enjoying this newfound prosperity, Edison saw it as an opportunity. He could pursue his greater vision. He began to speak openly about his belief. Electrical light could be made practical for everyday use. The age of flame was coming to an end. The weight of this vision was enormous. Edison understood that creating a working light bulb was only part of the challenge. To truly transform society, he would need to develop an entire system, a way to generate electricity reliably, distribute it safely, and deliver it to homes and businesses at a price ordinary people could afford. It was an undertaking that would require not just invention, but infrastructure. Not just a product, but an entire industry built from nothing. His decision to establish a laboratory in Menlo Park, New Jersey, marked a turning point in his quest. Here, Edison created what he called an invention factory. He gathered around him some of the brightest minds of the age. The laboratory became a place where the impossible was attempted daily, where failure was seen as data rather than defeat. Edison fostered an atmosphere of creative chaos. Ideas flowed as freely as the coffee that kept his team working through the night. The pressure to deliver on his vision intensified with each passing month. Investors who had been intrigued by his telegraph successes began to question, was electrical light truly achievable, or merely the fantasy of an overreaching inventor? Competitors in America and Europe were racing toward the same goal. Edison knew that history would remember only the first to succeed. Gas companies, sensing a threat to their monopoly on artificial light, spread fears about the dangers of electricity. They painted Edison as a reckless dreamer, whose experiments would burn down cities. The scope of the challenge became clearer with each experiment. Creating light was one thing. Creating light that would last more than a few seconds was another entirely. Edison and his team tested material after material. They watched each one glow brilliantly before succumbing to the intense heat. The laboratory filled with the acrid smell of burnt carbon, singed metal, and failed dreams. Yet Edison's notebooks grew thicker with data. Each failure eliminated another wrong path, bringing him incrementally closer to the right one. His methodical approach was both his strength and his curse. While others might have given up after 100 failures, Edison saw each unsuccessful experiment as progress. He would later famously say that he hadn't failed. He had simply found thousands of ways that didn't work. But in the moment, surrounded by the debris of countless attempts, with investors growing restless and competitors breathing down his neck, such philosophical comfort was hard to maintain. The personal cost of his obsession mounted daily. Edison's health suffered from the long hours and irregular meals. His relationships strained under the weight of his single-minded focus. He could talk for hours about filament materials and vacuum pumps, but struggled to engage with anything outside his laboratory. His wife and children became strangers, living in the shadow of his all-consuming quest. Yet he couldn't stop, couldn't rest, couldn't accept the darkness that had defined human limitation for millennia. Skepticism from the scientific establishment added another layer of pressure. Respected physicists published papers explaining why sustained incandescent light was theoretically impossible. Newspapers ran mocking cartoons of Edison surrounded by burnt-out bulbs. They suggested that the Wizard of Menlo Park had finally attempted magic beyond his powers. The gas industry funded studies showing the dangers of electrical systems. They played on public fears of this mysterious force that Edison proposed to bring into their homes. Yet Edison's determination only grew stronger with each challenge. He had seen too much, come too far, invested too much of himself to turn back now. In the depths of night, working by the very lamplight he sought to make obsolete, he pushed forward with an intensity that worried even his most devoted assistants. They watched their leader drive himself to the edge of exhaustion. He was sustained only by his vision of a world transformed. The loneliness of his pursuit was profound. While his team shared his dedication, only Edison fully grasped the magnitude of what they were attempting. He wasn't just trying to create a new product. He was trying to fundamentally alter the human condition, to break a chain that had bound humanity since the discovery of fire. It was a burden that pressed down on him in the quiet hours before dawn, when another night's experiments had yielded only more data about what wouldn't work. As 1878 drew to a close, Edison stood at a crossroads. He had made bold promises to the world, staking his reputation on the certainty that electrical light was not just possible, but inevitable. His laboratory had become a beacon for brilliant minds drawn to the challenge. Together, they had eliminated thousands of potential solutions. Yet the answer remained elusive, dancing just beyond their reach, like the very shadows they sought to banish. The notebooks were full, the investors were restless, and time was running out. Everything Edison had built, everything he had sacrificed, everything he had promised, would be tested in the months ahead. The darkness he had fought his entire life seemed to press in from all sides. It challenged him to make good on his audacious claim, to give humanity mastery over the night. Edison's laboratory buzzed with controlled chaos as 1878 drew to a close. A wonderland where copper wires snaked across workbenches like metallic vines. Glass vessels held chemicals that might unlock the future. His team of brilliant minds, Charles Batchelor, Francis Upton, John Crucy, moved through this organized disorder with practiced ease. Each man was drawn by Edison's magnetic vision of capturing lightning in glass. The air itself seemed charged with possibility, though beneath the excitement lay an undercurrent of urgency, driving them through 18-hour days. The weight of Edison's public promise pressed down on everyone in that laboratory. He had announced to the world with characteristic confidence that practical electric light was not merely possible, but imminent. Stock markets had trembled at his words. Gas company shares plummeted on nothing more than his reputation and bold claims. Newspapers had splashed his declaration across their front pages, and now the entire world watched, waiting for the Wizard of Menlo Park to make good on his audacious promise. There was no turning back, no quiet retreat into failure. The crushing reality of their early attempts would have broken lesser spirits. Day after day, they watched filament after filament glow brilliantly, for mere seconds before succumbing to the intense heat. The laboratory filled with the acrid smell of burnt carbon, singed metal, and what Edison privately thought of as the scent of expensive failure. His notebooks grew thick with detailed records of each defeat, temperature readings, duration times, material compositions, transforming failure into data with methodical precision. Yet even as the pages multiplied, the solution remained stubbornly elusive. Their systematic hunt for the perfect filament material became an exercise in creative desperation. Edison and his team tested everything they could imagine: platinum wire that cost a fortune and melted too quickly, carbon rods that crumbled, even human hair donated by obliging laboratory workers. They tried silk, cotton, paper, and dozens of metal alloys. Each new material brought a fresh surge of hope as it was carefully prepared and inserted into a glass bulb, followed by the inevitable disappointment as it burned out. Yet, Edison's enthusiasm never seemed to waver. His conviction that the answer existed somewhere in the vast catalog of earthly materials remained unshakable. Financial pressure mounted with each passing month. Investors who had eagerly backed Edison's previous successes began to shift uncomfortably in their chairs during meetings. How much longer? How much more money? The questions came more frequently, delivered with decreasing patience. Edison mortgaged his future on this dream, pouring every available dollar into equipment, materials, and the salaries of his growing team. He became a master of creative financing, juggling creditors like a circus performer, always managing to find just enough funding to continue for another month, another week, another crucial day. Then came the breakthrough moment with carbon, a discovery that sent cautious excitement rippling through the laboratory. They found that carbonized materials, organic substances baked in the absence of oxygen, could glow without immediately burning up. The process transformed everyday materials into something entirely new, creating filaments that might, just might, provide the durability they desperately needed. The laboratory erupted in celebration. Though Edison tempered their enthusiasm with his characteristic pragmatism, they had found a direction, not a destination. The painstaking refinement process that followed tested even Edison's legendary patience. They carbonized everything imaginable: bamboo fibers, cotton thread, paper, even coconut hair. Each material underwent the same careful treatment, shaped into thin filaments, baked in special ovens until only carbon remained, then delicately mounted in glass bulbs for testing. Edison searched obsessively for the perfect balance between durability and luminosity. He knew that a filament that lasted forever but gave no light was as useless as one that blazed brilliantly for seconds. The vacuum pump experiments revealed another crucial piece of the puzzle. Edison realized that air itself was the enemy, that oxygen caused even carbonized filaments to burn rather than glow. He threw himself into creating perfect vacuums inside glass bulbs, working with specialized pumps that could remove virtually every molecule of air. Each sealed bulb became a tiny universe where light might finally live, without the destructive presence of oxygen. The process was maddeningly delicate. Too much heat during sealing would crack the glass. Too little would leave gaps that let air seep in. The agony of near misses tortured the entire team. Bulbs that had lasted mere seconds began lasting minutes, then hours. They would gather around a glowing bulb like ancient humans around the first fire, watching, timing, barely daring to breathe lest they somehow disturb the delicate filament. Edison knew they were close, could feel it in his bones. But close wasn't good enough for practical use. People needed light that would last through entire evenings, through weeks and months of daily use. His team's dedication bordered on the obsessive. Batchelor often slept on a cot in the laboratory, unwilling to leave during critical experiments. Upton's mathematical precision complemented Edison's intuitive approach, calculating resistances and currents with slide rule accuracy. They shared meals at their workbenches, discussed filament materials over coffee that had grown cold hours ago, and celebrated small victories with the quiet satisfaction of men who understood they were part of something historic. Their personal lives became casualties of innovation, marriages strained, children forgotten in the all-consuming quest for sustainable light. Competition from other inventors added urgency to their efforts. Joseph Swan in England claimed his own breakthroughs with carbon filaments. Hiram Maxim worked furiously in his Brooklyn laboratory. Edison felt the hot breath of rivalry on his neck, knowing that history would remember only the winner of this race. The thought of someone else claiming the prize after all his work, all his promises, drove him to push even harder, to test more materials, to refine more processes. The emotional toll on Edison became increasingly visible to those who knew him well. His marriage to Mary suffered under the weight of his obsession. She would send dinner to the laboratory, knowing he wouldn't come home to eat it. His children learned to treasure the rare moments when their father emerged from his electric dreams, to notice their existence. Edison loved his family, but he loved his vision more. Or perhaps he convinced himself that his sacrifice would ultimately benefit them, along with all humanity. Then came the moment with carbonized bamboo that changed everything. Testing a filament made from a bamboo fan brought from Japan, they watched it glow steadily hour after hour. The laboratory fell silent except for the ticking of the clock and the faint hum of electrical current. 1 hour passed, then 2, then 5. As dawn broke through the windows, the bulb still glowed with steady light. They had found their material, though Edison insisted on testing dozens of bamboo varieties to find the optimal species. The first successful long-duration test felt like crossing from one world into another. A bulb burned for over 13 hours before finally succumbing, and Edison's team barely dared to celebrate. They repeated the experiment, then repeated it again. Each success building their confidence that they had indeed crossed the crucial threshold. The impossible had become merely difficult, and difficult was something Edison knew how to handle. The rush of optimization that followed was pure Edison. Methodical, relentless, systematic. They fine-tuned voltages, discovering the sweet spot where filaments glowed brightly without burning out. They perfected their vacuum techniques, achieving near-perfect absence of air. They adjusted filament thickness with microscopic precision, finding the exact diameter that balanced longevity with light output. Each small improvement brought them closer to commercial viability, to a product that could transform the world. Yet even as the bulb design crystallized into perfection, Edison recognized the parallel challenge that loomed. Creating a working light bulb was only half the battle. They needed to generate electricity reliably and distribute it safely to millions of homes. The gas companies had spent decades building their infrastructure of pipes and storage facilities. Edison would need to create an entirely new system from scratch. one that could deliver this mysterious, invisible force without terrifying or endangering the public. His systematic approach to the power problem revealed the true scope of his genius. Edison didn't just invent a light bulb. He designed an entire electrical ecosystem. He sketched generators that could produce steady current, planned distribution networks that could carry power efficiently across distances, envisioned meters that could measure usage for billing. In his mind, he saw not just glowing bulbs, but an interconnected system that would make electrical light as common and reliable as running water. The weight of skepticism from the established scientific community provided a constant backdrop of doubt. Respected physicists published papers explaining why Edison's approach was fundamentally flawed, why his direct current system would never work over meaningful distances. Newspapers questioned his sanity, suggesting that the Wizard of Menlo Park had finally attempted magic beyond even his considerable powers. Yet Edison pressed forward with unshakable conviction. Armed with something his critics lacked, working bulbs that glowed steadily for hours, proof that theory must sometimes yield to results. The magic moment arrived on October 21, 1879, as Edison's team carefully inserted a carbonized cotton thread into their latest bulb. The filament, no thicker than a human hair, had been baked for hours until only pure carbon remained, then delicately mounted between platinum wires inside a pear-shaped glass globe. As current flowed through the circuit Edison had meticulously designed, the thread began to glow with a warm, steady light, filling the laboratory with an amber radiance unlike anything they had achieved before. 1 hour passed, then 2, then 5, and still the filament held strong, neither flickering nor fading, transforming electrical current into illumination with quiet persistence. The electricity flowing through Edison's circuit represented years of careful refinement. Current traveled from his improved dynamo through copper wires wrapped in silk insulation, moving with invisible purpose toward the precious bulb. Each component had been selected through exhaustive testing. The gauge of wire calculated to minimize resistance, the connections soldered with precision to prevent energy loss. The entire system balanced to deliver exactly the right amount of power. Edison watched the steady flow of electrons with the satisfaction of a conductor hearing his orchestra play in perfect harmony, each element contributing to the greater symphony of sustainable light. The elegant simplicity of the final design belied the complexity of its creation. A thin carbonized filament suspended in a near-perfect vacuum, sealed within hand-blown glass, the culmination of over 1,000 experiments distilled into one beautiful solution. The bulb's pear shape wasn't arbitrary, but carefully calculated to distribute heat evenly, preventing the stress fractures that had plagued earlier designs. The platinum lead wires, though expensive, provided the perfect seal where they passed through the glass, expanding and contracting at the same rate to maintain the precious vacuum. Every detail reflected Edison's methodical approach, his understanding that true innovation lay not in complexity, but in finding the simplest solution that actually worked. Edison's testing process revealed his commitment to practical application rather than mere laboratory success. Bulbs ran continuously for days while team members recorded their output in detailed logs, measuring not just duration, but the quality of light produced. They documented how the filaments gradually thinned through sublimation, noting the precise point where light output dropped below useful levels. Edison insisted on testing under conditions that mimicked real-world use, turning bulbs on and off repeatedly, subjecting them to voltage fluctuations, even vibrating them to simulate the rumble of nearby traffic. Only bulbs that survived this gauntlet earned his approval for the next phase of development. The breakthrough of the parallel circuit transformed Edison's invention from a curiosity into a practical system. His realization that connecting bulbs in parallel rather than series would allow individual control marked a moment of profound insight. In a series circuit, one failed bulb would extinguish all others, like old-fashioned Christmas lights that frustrated generations. But in Edison's parallel design, each bulb operated independently, drawing power from the main circuit like houses along a street. A person could turn off their bedroom light without affecting the kitchen, could replace a burnt bulb without plunging the entire home into darkness. This seemingly simple innovation made electrical lighting suitable for everyday use. The birth of the complete electrical system revealed Edison's true genius. He wasn't merely inventing a light bulb, but designing an entire technological ecosystem from pure imagination. His notebooks filled with sketches of generators that could produce steady direct current, distribution networks that could carry power efficiently across distances, switches that allowed simple control, meters that could measure usage for fair billing. Each component required its own innovations: generators that wouldn't overheat during continuous operation, underground cables insulated against moisture, junction boxes that could safely distribute power to multiple circuits. Edison approached each challenge with the same methodical persistence that had conquered the filament problem. The first public demonstration in December 1879 transformed Menlo Park into a wonderland of light. Edison's laboratory glowed like a beacon in the winter darkness, drawing crowds who arrived by special trains to witness the miracle. Reporters watched in amazement as Edison casually flipped switches, commanding light to appear and disappear at will. The steady, clean illumination bore no resemblance to the flickering, smoky flames they knew. Women marveled at light that wouldn't soil their ceilings with soot. Men calculated the labor saved from not trimming wicks or refilling reservoirs. Children pressed their faces against windows, mesmerized by bulbs that could burn all night without danger. The world's press struggled to convey the magnitude of what they witnessed. Their vocabulary, shaped by centuries of flame-based lighting, proved inadequate to describe this new phenomenon. They wrote of bottled sunlight and tamed lightning, grasping for metaphors to help readers understand light without fire. Some reporters touched the bulbs gingerly, amazed that something glowing so brightly remained cool enough to handle. Others noted the absence of smoke, the lack of smell, the way electric light revealed true colors that gas flames had always distorted. Their articles spread across the globe, carrying news that the age of artificial daylight had finally arrived. Edison's meticulous attention to safety addressed fears that electricity might prove more dangerous than the fires it replaced. He designed fuses that would melt before wires could overheat, creating deliberate weak points that would fail safely rather than catastrophically. His insulated wiring prevented accidental shocks, while switches were engineered to contain any sparks within sealed chambers. Edison understood that one spectacular electrical fire could destroy public confidence in his system. So he built in redundancies and safeguards that made electrical lighting actually safer than the gas jets and oil lamps it would replace. Insurance companies, initially skeptical, soon recognized that buildings with electric lights posed lower fire risks. The economics of illumination occupied Edison's thoughts as much as the technical challenges. He calculated costs obsessively: the price of copper wire per foot, the expense of generating equipment, the wages of workers who would maintain the system. His goal wasn't just to create light, but to make it affordable for ordinary families. By designing bulbs that could be mass-produced and standardizing components for easy replacement, Edison brought the per-hour cost of electric light below that of gas. His business model included everything from power generation to monthly billing, creating a template that utility companies still follow today. The precision of Edison's manufacturing process transformed laboratory success into commercial reality. He established quality control standards that seemed obsessive to observers, measuring filament resistance, testing vacuum integrity, inspecting every solder joint. Workers trained for weeks to create identical bulbs, learning to handle delicate carbonized filaments without breaking them, to seal glass at exactly the right temperature. Edison's factory became a model of systematic production, where each bulb emerging from the line met specifications that ensured reliable performance. This attention to manufacturing detail proved as crucial as the original invention itself. The global search for the perfect filament material led to one of history's more unusual quests. Edison's team tested over 6,000 plant fibers, seeking the ideal combination of durability and light output. They carbonized bamboo from Japan, cotton from Egypt, silk from China, creating a botanical catalog of electrical properties. The winner, a specific species of bamboo from the Kyoto region, provided filaments that lasted over 1,200 hours. Edison contracted with farmers in Japan to supply this precious material, creating one of the first global supply chains dedicated to a single component. The sight of Japanese bamboo being carefully processed in New Jersey embodied the international nature of the electrical revolution. The moment of commercial viability arrived when bulbs consistently lasted over 1,200 hours. Edison knew this threshold separated laboratory curiosity from practical necessity. A bulb that burned for 50 hours might impress scientists, but would frustrate consumers with constant replacements. But 1,200 hours meant a family could use a bulb every evening for a year before needing a replacement. This durability, combined with mass production techniques, brought the cost per hour of light within reach of middle-class budgets. Edison had created not just an invention, but a sustainable business model. The electricity generation challenge yielded to Edison's systematic approach. His improved dynamos, nicknamed Jumbo for their impressive size, could produce steady direct current for hundreds of bulbs simultaneously. These machines, standing twice the height of a man, hummed with mechanical precision as steam engines drove their massive armatures. Edison's Pearl Street station in Manhattan housed 6 of these giants, ready to power an entire neighborhood with clean, reliable electricity. The station included coal bunkers for fuel, boilers for steam, and a maze of switches and meters to control distribution. Every component reflected months of refinement, each problem solved through patient experimentation. The installation of the first electrical grid transformed Manhattan streets into construction zones. Workers dug trenches for underground cables, Edison having decided that overhead wires would create both aesthetic and safety problems. The cables themselves were marvels of engineering. Copper conductors wrapped in layers of insulation, protected by iron pipes, designed to carry power safely beneath busy streets. Junction boxes at intersections allowed power to branch into individual buildings, while meters in basements would track each customer's usage. The physical infrastructure of the electrical age took shape block by block, Edison supervising every detail with characteristic intensity. The integration of all components into a functioning system represented the culmination of Edison's vision. On September 4, 1882, the generators at Pearl Street Station began their steady rhythm. Current flowed through underground arteries to 85 customers who had agreed to test this new technology. In offices and shops throughout Lower Manhattan, people turned switches and watched electric bulbs spring to life. The system worked exactly as Edison had planned. Generators maintaining steady voltage, distribution networks carrying power without significant loss, individual bulbs operating independently, meters recording usage for accurate billing. Years of preparation crystallized into this moment of seamless operation. Edison's quiet satisfaction as he stood in his laboratory surrounded by glowing bulbs reflected more than personal triumph. He had given humanity its greatest gift since the discovery of fire itself, the ability to create light without flame, to extend productive hours beyond sunset, to transform darkness from master to servant. The bulbs glowing steadily around him represented not just technical achievement, but a fundamental shift in the human condition. Children born into Edison's electric world would grow up taking illumination for granted, unable to imagine the tyranny of darkness that had constrained every previous generation. As he watched the steady glow of carbonized bamboo transmuting electricity into light, Edison knew he had achieved something that would outlive him by centuries. Yet even he couldn't fully grasp how profoundly his gift of light would reshape civilization, creating possibilities that would have seemed like magic to the boy who had watched his mother struggle to read by candlelight. The darkness that had defined human limitations since the dawn of time was beginning its permanent retreat. And somewhere in laboratories and workshops around the world, other inventors were already building upon Edison's foundation, preparing innovations that would require the electric light he had fought so hard to perfect. Experience September 4, 1882, Edison throwing the switch at Pearl Street Station, electricity flowing through Manhattan's underground cables. The world's first commercial power grid bringing light to 85 customers who witnessed the dawn of the electrical age. The massive dynamos hummed to life with mechanical precision, their steady rhythm marking humanity's transition from the age of flame to the era of electrical illumination. In offices and shops throughout Lower Manhattan, clerks and merchants turned unfamiliar switches and watched as glass bulbs filled with warm, unwavering light. No smoke rose from these new fixtures. No heat radiated to stifle summer rooms. No wicks needed trimming. Just pure, controllable illumination flowing through copper veins beneath the city streets. The New York Times building blazed with electric light visible for blocks. A beacon announcing that Edison's impossible dream had become everyday reality. Feel the immediate transformation of daily life. Families gathering around dinner tables illuminated by steady electric light. Children reading late into the evening. The rhythm of human activity no longer enslaved to the sun's schedule. Mothers discovered they could sew intricate patterns after sunset without straining their eyes, while fathers read newspapers in comfort previously unknown. The harsh shadows cast by oil lamps gave way to gentle, even illumination that revealed true colors and fine details. Children who had been sent to bed at dusk now studied their lessons by electric light, their education no longer limited by the season's short days. The very texture of family life shifted as darkness lost its power to separate and isolate, replaced by warm pools of light that drew people together in the evening hours. Witness the rapid spread of electrical systems, cities across America and Europe installing Edison's technology. The night sky beginning to glow with artificial stars as civilization pushed back the darkness. Within months of Pearl Street's success, orders flooded in from Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago, London, Paris, Berlin. Each city wanted its own electrical grid, its own liberation from the tyranny of darkness. Edison's team spread across the globe, supervising the installation of generators and distribution networks, training local engineers in the mysteries of electrical systems, street by street, neighborhood by neighborhood. The infrastructure of the modern world took shape. Gas company executives watched their monopoly crumble as customers eagerly switched to the cleaner, safer, more convenient electric light. Experience the revolution in manufacturing. Factories running 3 shifts under electric illumination. Productivity soaring as work continued around the clock. The industrial age accelerating beyond all previous limits. Mill owners who had shut down at sunset now kept their machines running through the night, doubling or tripling their output. Workers appreciated the steady light that reduced accidents and eye strain, though some grumbled about the longer hours it enabled. The precision required for intricate assembly work became possible at any hour, not just during daylight. Industries that had never existed before sprang up to manufacture electrical components, bulbs, switches, meters, miles of insulated wire. Edison's invention didn't just light factories, it fundamentally transformed how humanity produced goods. Feel the social changes rippling outward, evening entertainment flourishing as theaters and restaurants stayed open late, nightlife emerging as electric lights made streets safe for the first time in human history. The concept of going out after dark, previously limited to the wealthy with their carriage lanterns, became accessible to ordinary people. Vaudeville theaters installed electric footlights that didn't risk setting costumes ablaze. Restaurants discovered they could create intimate atmospheres with carefully placed electric bulbs, drawing dinner crowds who had previously eaten at home. Dance halls and social clubs proliferated, their electric chandeliers creating magical spaces where young people could gather safely after work. The very notion of leisure time expanded as activities no longer needed to cease at sunset. Witness the transformation of education, libraries extending their hours, students studying by clean electric light instead of straining their eyes over flickering candles, knowledge becoming accessible regardless of daylight. Universities installed electric lighting in lecture halls and laboratories, enabling evening classes for working adults. Medical students could study anatomy texts with clarity impossible under gaslight, while law students pored over case files without the headaches induced by flickering flames. Public libraries, previously closing at dusk, now welcomed readers until late evening, democratizing access to knowledge. The electric light became a tool of social mobility, allowing ambitious individuals to educate themselves after their day's labor ended. Experience the birth of the modern city, skyscrapers rising toward the heavens because electric elevators and lighting made tall buildings practical, urban landscapes reshaping themselves around Edison's invention. Architects, freed from the need to maximize window space for natural light, designed buildings that soared 20, 30, 40 stories high. Electric elevators whisked occupants to upper floors that would have been impractical with stairs alone. Deep within these towers, electric lights illuminated interior offices and corridors that never saw sunlight. The urban skyline itself became a testament to Edison's invention, each glowing window representing lives and work made possible by electrical illumination. Cities grew upward rather than outward, concentrating human activity in vertical communities connected by electric light. Feel the impact on women's lives. Housewives freed from the daily drudgery of trimming wicks and cleaning lamp chimneys. Electric light enabling them to pursue evening activities and education. The hours previously spent maintaining oil lamps, filling reservoirs, adjusting wicks, washing soot-stained glass, vanished with the flip of a switch. Women found themselves with precious evening time to read, study, or pursue crafts. Sewing circles met after dinner under bright electric light, while women's educational societies gathered in well-lit parlors to discuss literature and politics. The women's suffrage movement itself benefited from the ability to hold evening meetings and produce pamphlets by electric light. Edison's bulb became an unexpected ally in women's liberation from domestic drudgery. Witness the explosion of innovation. Edison's success inspiring countless other inventors. The electrical age spawning radio, television, and countless devices that would define the modern world. The infrastructure Edison created for lighting became the foundation for an entire ecosystem of electrical devices. Inventors realized that the same power flowing to light bulbs could drive motors, heat elements, and communication devices. Within decades, electric fans cooled summer homes, electric irons smoothed wrinkles, electric stoves cooked meals. The radio brought voices across vast distances, all powered by the electrical grid Edison had envisioned. Each new invention built upon his foundation, creating a cascade of innovation that transformed every aspect of human life. Experience the global transformation. Electric light spreading to every continent, remote villages connecting to power grids. Humanity's relationship with darkness forever altered by one man's persistent vision. Missionaries brought electric generators to remote outposts, using light to attract converts and provide medical care after dark. Colonial administrators installed electrical systems in far-flung capitals, extending their influence through the power of illumination. Indigenous peoples who had lived by natural rhythms for millennia suddenly found their villages transformed by the arrival of electric light. The spread wasn't always benign. Electric light enabled factories to exploit workers around the clock, mines to operate continuously, colonial powers to extend their control. Yet even in its complications, the transformation was total and irreversible. Feel the economic revolution, entire industries emerging around electrical power, millions of jobs created. Edison's invention becoming the foundation of modern economic prosperity. Electrical workers became a new class of skilled laborers, stringing wires and maintaining generators. Power companies employed thousands to produce and distribute electricity. Manufacturing plants sprang up to produce bulbs, requiring glass blowers, metal workers, and assembly line workers. The electrical industry created wealth on a scale previously unimaginable, with Edison's own companies growing into industrial giants. Stock markets traded shares in electrical utilities, while banks financed the expansion of power grids. The light bulb became not just an invention, but the cornerstone of a new economy. Witness the improvement in public health, electric street lighting reducing crime and accidents, homes becoming safer without open flames, hospitals operating more effectively under reliable illumination. Police reported dramatic drops in nighttime crime as electric streetlights eliminated the dark corners where criminals had lurked. Accident rates plummeted as people could see where they walked after dark. House fires, the scourge of the gaslight era, became increasingly rare as families switched to flameless electric bulbs. Hospitals installed electric lights in operating theaters, allowing surgeons to work with precision impossible under gaslight. Emergency procedures no longer had to wait for daylight, saving countless lives. The simple act of replacing flame with electric filament improved public health in ways Edison had never anticipated. Experience the cultural shift, humanity's ancient fear of darkness beginning to fade. Children growing up in a world where light was always available at the flip of a switch. The primal terror that had shaped human psychology since prehistoric times gradually loosened its grip. Children born into the electrical age never knew the absolute darkness that had terrified their parents. Bedtime stories lost their power to frighten when a reassuring light switch waited within reach. The monsters that lurked in darkness retreated to the realm of fiction, no longer credible threats in a world where light could banish shadows instantly. Language itself evolved. Throwing light on a subject replaced bringing a candle to see, while bright ideas acknowledged the new metaphor for human understanding. Feel the acceleration of human progress. Scientific research advancing rapidly under electric illumination. Discoveries multiplying as researchers could work effectively, regardless of natural light. Laboratories hummed with activity at all hours as scientists pursued their investigations under steady electric light. Microscope work, previously limited to daylight hours, could continue through the night. Astronomers used electric lights with red filters to preserve their night vision while recording observations. Chemical reactions could be monitored continuously, leading to breakthroughs in materials science. The pace of discovery accelerated as researchers collaborated across time zones, their work connected by electric light and the telegraph systems that shared Edison's infrastructure. The age of rapid scientific progress had dawned. Illuminated by Edison's bulbs, witness Edison's growing legacy. The Wizard of Menlo Park becoming a global icon, his name synonymous with innovation, his approach to systematic invention inspiring generations of future inventors. Schools taught the Edison method of persistent experimentation. Young inventors studied his notebooks, learning that failure was simply data in disguise. His image appeared on stamps and currency, while museums preserved his laboratories as shrines to human ingenuity. The mythology sometimes overshadowed the man. Edison, the lone genius, replacing Edison, the leader of a talented team. Yet the core truth remained. One man's refusal to accept darkness had changed the world forever. His 1,000 experiments with filaments became a parable of persistence that inspired others to tackle impossible challenges. Experience the standardization of electrical systems. Edison's designs becoming the template for global electrification. His technical specifications ensuring compatibility across different manufacturers and regions. The Edison screw base became the universal standard for light bulbs, ensuring that any manufacturer's bulb would fit any socket. Voltage standards emerged from his early decisions, creating compatibility across electrical devices. The battle between Edison's direct current and Tesla's alternating current would rage for years, but the fundamental infrastructure Edison created, generators, distribution networks, metering systems, provided the blueprint others followed. International conferences established electrical standards based on Edison's pioneering work, ensuring that a light bulb made in New Jersey would work in London or Tokyo. Feel the profound philosophical impact. Humanity's relationship with time itself transformed. The ancient cycle of sunrise and sunset becoming merely suggestions rather than absolute commands. Work schedules no longer bowed to natural light. Social activities ignored the position of the sun. The human body's circadian rhythms, evolved over millennia to follow daylight, suddenly faced the challenge of artificial illumination. Some worried about this disconnection from natural cycles, while others celebrated the freedom to structure time according to human needs rather than celestial movements. The very concept of day and night blurred as electric light made all hours potentially productive. Humanity had not just conquered darkness, but had fundamentally altered its relationship with time itself. Witness the ultimate triumph. Edison's electric light becoming so fundamental to human existence that people could barely imagine life without it. Darkness transformed from humanity's master to its servant. Within a single generation, electric light shifted from miracle to mundane necessity. Children born into the electrical age took illumination for granted, unable to comprehend their grandparents' stories of life bounded by sunset. Power outages that plunged neighborhoods into darkness revealed how completely dependent humanity had become on Edison's gift. The infrastructure of civilization, from traffic signals to computer screens, assumed the constant availability of electrical power. What had begun as one man's quest to help his mother read in the evening had become the invisible foundation supporting all modern life. The boy who had asked why humanity should suffer in darkness had provided an answer so complete that the question itself was forgotten, buried beneath the warm glow of 10 billion electric lights pushing back the night. Rest in the warm glow of Edison's legacy. Every light switch you've ever flipped, every late-night reading session, every brightly lit city street stands as testament to one man's refusal to accept humanity's ancient limitations. His 1,000 failures with filament materials weren't defeats, but stepping stones. Each burnt-out thread bringing him closer to the carbonized bamboo that would glow for 1,200 hours. The boy who watched his mother strain to read by candlelight gave us more than illumination. He gave us freedom from the tyranny of sunset, the ability to shape our days according to human needs, rather than celestial movements. Tonight, as electric light bathes your room in gentle radiance, you're experiencing the direct result of Edison's methodical persistence, his notebooks filled with failed experiments that ultimately yielded the one success that mattered. Let Edison's persistence comfort your own dreams as you drift toward sleep, surrounded by the gentle electric light that once seemed impossible. Remember that the greatest transformations begin with restless minds who dare to imagine a better world. A partially deaf newspaper boy who asked why darkness should limit human potential, who spent years in basement laboratories, mixing chemicals and testing theories while others slept. Find peace in knowing that human ingenuity can indeed conquer our deepest challenges, that somewhere right now, modern inventors are working through their own 1,000 failures, driven by the same stubborn optimism that kept Edison experimenting through 6,000 materials. The infrastructure of our illuminated world, every power plant, every buried cable, every glowing bulb, whispers the same message Edison's life embodied. Persistence transforms the impossible into the inevitable. As you close your eyes tonight, rest easy knowing that the darkness holds no power here, conquered long ago by one restless mind who simply refused to accept that things had to remain as they'd always been.